Well, a warm welcome to today's talk, Thursday the 12th of January. Now, there's a new COVID variant around, XBB 1.5. And basically, I've concluded that we're pretty well all of us going to be infected with it, or at least certainly exposed to it in the next few months. The good news is I'm not particularly worried about it. So let's look at it now. Now, if we start off with the American data from the CDC, we see that the BA5 has gradually gone down. The one we thought was so transmissible originally, that's been outcompeted by these BQ1 and BQ11 variants, so the BQ1 variant and its subvariant BQ11. But now XB15 is really starting to take off. And the growth advantage here is about 40% over BQ1. So it's reproducing much more quickly and spreading much more quickly. And it's going to become the predominant variant, and we're all going to be exposed to it. But let's look at the detail now. So this is from Dr. Jha, the White House coordinator, COVID-19 coordinator. And he actually says the spread of XBB 1.5 is stunning, direct quote. And 80% of Americans who've already been infected are likely to catch it again. So whether you've been vaccinated, whether you've had COVID before, you're probably going to catch XBB 1.5, 80% of Americans. The vast majority, the overwhelming majority, is going to be a very mild, common cold type illness. So for the vast majority of people, it's not a great deal of concern, but I'm just reporting it because it's almost certainly going to happen. Now, this is Dr. Jha goes on then to give quite a lot of other advice, which I'm not allowed to disagree with, but I'm under no obligation to repeat either. So we'll move straight on to Dr. Paula, British doctor, working in the States, virologist, Southern California. Again, talking about XBB 1.5, it's crazy infectious. So very, very, very infectious. All the things that are protected during the past couple of years, are they still going to work? I don't think are going to protect you against this new crop of variants, especially this XBB 1.5. It is just so transmissible. Essentially, everyone in the country is at risk of infection now, and as we've said, probably 80% of Americans are scheduled for infection pretty soon. And if you're in the UK, don't worry, we're not too far behind. We'll have a very similar looking picture to this really quite soon. We haven't got it yet, but we'll have it fairly soon. Even if you're super careful, up to date on vaccines, or have caught it before, you're still going to get it again. But for the vast majority of us, as we've said, it should be very, very mild. The numbers of severe infections and deaths remain relatively low, despite high levels of infection. So the official guideline from the CDC and from the White House is avoid getting infected. However, if you do get infected, and it's going to be pretty well impossible to avoid it, that's going to stimulate your mucosal compartment immunity, your natural immunity, and that's the upside of this. So the White House and the CDC are advising against catching it, but it's going to be inevitable. And that will increase your levels of immunity, which is the good side of this situation. US variant population proportions at the moment. So like the UK, BQ11 is still the main one. Then XBB 1.5 is the next one. This is going to replace this. So this one is going to be on the way down. This one's going to be on the way up, very much so. Likewise, BQ1, which is still quite prevalent in the States, is going to go down. XBB is probably going to go down because it's outcompeted by its subvariant, XBB 1.5, and BA5 and BA, the original Omicron ones, going down. They'll be fully replaced, as we see in the graphic there. They're virtually out already. And there's lots of other minor variants that do crop up that aren't of too much significance. Now, how does this compare to the UK data? And the UK data gives us some quite detailed additional information. If you want that, I'll give you that now. UK Health Security Agency Technical briefing 49 just released yesterday. So currently there's a very high incidence of COVID in the UK. It's 1 in 20 people. 4.5% of the population in England have COVID. This was as of about 10 days ago. So 4.5% of the population have COVID now. This is how common this is. We are well into this period of endemicity at the moment. Now, the primary lineage in the UK is BQ1. So it's a bit like the situation in the United States. Although in the United States, as we see, the XBB 1.5 has grown quicker. In the UK, we're kind of about here now for the XBB, but it's going to grow really quite dramatically quickly. Now, hospitalisations with the BQ1, which is the main strain in the UK. Primary analysis, no increase in risk for people with BQ1 compared to BA5. Now, we don't have the data yet in the UK for the XBB 1.5, but in the States, there's no indications at the moment it's causing more hospitalisations. At the moment, it's looking like just another Omicron variant, which is in a sense, it's good news, but it's just incredibly transmissible. So we're all probably going to get a sniffle with this. The vast majority of people only getting a sniffle, hopefully, in the next weeks in the States, next month or two in the UK. So effectiveness of the bivalent booster against hospitalisation with BQ1. Now, the data we have here is that BA5 reduced hospitalisation after vaccine by 64%, 2 weeks after the vaccine was given. But the effect of this probably only lasts for around about 10 weeks. We looked at this a couple of days ago. It doesn't last for very long. And that's not taking into account any risk-benefit analysis. The protection from BQ1 against hospitalisation is down to 50%, because remember, the vaccines that we're giving now, the original Wuhan virus that we're vaccinating against now no longer exists in the general population. And the BA4-5, which is the other part of the bivalent vaccine, well, you can see it essentially no longer exists. So in a sense, we're currently vaccinating against variants of the virus, which are no longer circulating in our people. So it's not surprising that the protection against hospitalisation has gone down, and we know is relatively short-lived. Now, the XBB, the original one, only first flagged on the 11th of October. So this BQ variant here, it's only just come. And it's on its way out. It's going to be one of the shortest-lived variants ever. Because although it was outcompeting BA5, it is being significantly outcompeted by XBB 1.5. Now, XBB is what you call a recombinant lineage. Now, what happens here is a person is infected with two COVID variants. And we stress it is COVID variants, and the only COVID variants that are around are the Omicron. So it's all still Omicron. And of course, Omicron spared us from Delta, which was really quite a dangerous virus. This is much better than Delta. So one person was infected with two BA2s, actually, two subvariants of BA2 at the same time. And one cell was infected with two different variants at the same time. And these variants merged into a new type of virus. So it's a recombinant. And there hasn't been a really big takeoff of a recombinant variant like this before. These are the ones that have mostly evolved independently. They're sublineages. So this is a recombinant variant, which is going to become the predominant variant, as we've said, pretty soon. So it was two BA2s actually that recombined, and that was the one BA2, and that was the other BA2, and they combined to form the first XBB. And of course, the XBB 1.5 is a sublineage of the original XBB. Now, why are these why are they taking off more? Advantageous spike protein mutations from both. So it took some of the best spike proteins from that one from the BA2 and that one from the BA2, and they put together the best of both via the evolutionary processes. And that is what generated this very, very infectious variant, this XBB, and especially the XBB 1.15. So there's been changes to the receptor binding domain in the spike protein, and it fits really quite snugly now, very snugly now, into the ACE2 receptor, which is how the virus gets in, mostly in the nose and the mouth. Most of these receptors are in the nose and the mouth. That's why you get mostly common cold type symptoms. So there's about 12 mutations compared to BA2. I've said about 12 because obviously it's going to vary depending on the type of BA2 or the sublineage of BA2. More receptor binding domain mutation, so it fits in very tightly, plus about 23 other non-spike mutations. Rapid replication in primary culture of nasal epithelium, according to the British data. So what they have in cell culture, they have respiratory epithelium that you can grow up in cell culture and examine how quickly the virus infects that. And the virus, the XBB, replicates very, very rapidly in the nasal mucosa. To me, that means that most of the symptoms we're going to get are going to be nasal or oral or pharyngeal. They're going to be upper airway symptoms. And that's also going to generate some systemic immunity. So that's by the time the infection does get down into the lower airways, there's already going to be immunity. And remember, we are not seeing COVID pneumonias. We're not seeing COVID acute respiratory distress syndrome, thankfully, in our hospitals at the moment. We are seeing people who've got other diseases that are developing complications of those other diseases. But the Omicron variants are presenting mostly as a common cold, although some people do get complications, but it's a smaller number. So rapidly replicates in the nose. XBB 1.5, I don't particularly like nicknames, so I'm not going to repeat it. Currently a low prevalence in the UK. So in the United States now it's, what was it? It was about 20. In the United States it was 20 something, I think. In the UK, it's lower. In the United States, it's 27.6% in the United States. So about 28% XBB 1.5 in the United States, 4.5 in the UK. And the only way that figure is going in the UK is up. It's going to spread massively, massively quickly. XBB 1.5 has got a combination of immune escape and ACE2. So it fits very well onto the ACE2 receptor. And it also avoids previous immunity from the vaccine and from previous infection. So XBB 1.5 is 38%, nearly 40% relative growth rate advantage compared to BQ1. So if we look at the American data again, we see that this is going to be reproducing about 40% faster than this. Therefore, it's going to replace it. And in fact, from the British data, we've got a graphic there. So this line here is for the BQ11. And we see that the BQ11, can you see that? The BQ11 here is more infectious than the BQ1, than the BF7, than the BA4.6. It's more infectious than all the previous ones, more infectious than the BA5, obviously, and the BA2. But the XB 1.5 here is by far the most infectious, way more infectious than the BQ11. Now, there is another one in the UK, this CH11, that's not in the States, which is more infectious. So this will increase in number quite a bit, but it will eventually be outcompeted by the XBB 1.5. So I think we can say with some confidence that this is what's going to happen. So big growth advantage over the current variant, and as we say, the BQs won't have been around for long. They came and they went fairly quickly, or they are going fairly quickly. So XBB is phenotypically similar to other Omicron variants. The phenotype is the actual virus itself that's determined by the genotype of the virus. So it is an Omicron. This is an Omicron. That's why I'm not overly concerned. It's not that similar to Delta or other previous variants of concern, which is a great relief. And the fact that these Omicron variants are so contagious means it'd be really actually quite hard to imagine a more dangerous variant that was more contagious than these Omicron variants, particularly now the XBB 1.5. It would have to be phenomenally infectious. So I really don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to, over the next month or so, a few months anyway, I'm pretty confident this is going to grow. And it's going to become the main variant, and we're going to develop lots of immunity, which is it's good that while the authorities in the States are still recommending against getting infected, as are the authorities in the UK, if you do get infected, you can know that it's stimulating your immunity. I think that's the balance of what I'm trying to say. Now, we've got this other one in the UK, CH11, which is not in the States. So it's not in the States. Moderate prevalence. It's got a 21% relative growth advantage over BQ11. So if this was in the States, it would be partly displacing the BQs as well, but it doesn't seem to be there. It's the XB, but the XBB 1.5 is even more contagious than this one that we have in the UK. This will probably increase for a while in the UK, but then eventually it will be outcompeted by the XBB 1.5, although that will take longer. So the prevalence in the UK at the moment, up to the 26th of December, BQs are the most common, then this CH11, then the BA5. So the BQ1, the BQ1 will start to go down now. The CH11 will increase at least for a period of time before it is eventually outcompeted by the XBB 1.5. The BA5 will go down, BA 2.75. The XBB 1.5 will go way up. This is going to become huge. This is going to become the main variant. That's the one that's going to be reinfecting the majority of us. XBB less so. It's the XBB 1.5. It's sublineage. It's more transmissible. BA2 is still in the UK. That will go down. BA 4.6 will go down, and others, or just there'll always be a few others. So, report from the technical group, and this is due to lab experiments. Neutralization titers against XBB are lower than any contemporary variant tested. So XBB is more infectious, and XBB, as we've said, 1.5 is even more infectious than that. So expect post-vaccine and post-infection breakthrough. Basically, we're all going to be exposed to this, or the vast majority of us are going to be exposed to this. The vast majority of us are going to have very minor illness, because remember, it replicates rapidly in the nasal epithelium, which is going to give you a runny nose and nasal symptoms and upper airway symptoms initially. So we're seeing these constant changes. It is absolutely stunning, as you've seen from those doctors in the States, how quickly these new variants can spread. And they're just going to go through the whole population. And there's essentially, it's going to happen. The White House and the CDC are advising preventative measures, but practically this is going to go through the whole population. So you and I have got 80 or 90% chance over the next weeks or months of being exposed to XBB 1.5. But personally, I am not too concerned about it, although it is still causing some hospitalizations, but as we've said, not with the acute respiratory distress syndrome that we saw with the previous really quite nasty Wuhan Alpha and Delta variants. So something to look forward to, but once you've had that, once you've had those common cold symptoms, you will have greater levels of immunity. And of course, it is going to protect you against having infection, will protect you against subsequent. If you're reinfected again, it will protect you against serious disease, hospitalizations, and death. And I expect the mucosal immunity to last an awful lot longer than the relatively short 10 or 11 weeks of vaccine-induced immunity. If you didn't watch this video, it probably wouldn't make too much difference, really. It is interesting to follow. And we're going to see more variants after this, because we're now in the endemic phase. This is going to go on for the next 10 or 20 years, almost certainly. And I'm not particularly worried about that now. It's become one of the many endemic viruses. Yeah, I think that's about it. staggering rates of reproduction. It's just amazing how this evolutionary process has worked. So, thank you for watching.